from me. I got one more person here. And open our this window. Study. Now we're going to do the official start of the workshop. And today we are talking about mastering grant writing, how to manage your grants, and how to report back. I think grants is something that we all like to learn about a little bit more, and hopefully the tips that you are going to get today are useful for you. As you know, this is part of a series we do every month, and we are actually reaching the end of our series because this is our um, presentation number 9 in the year, and the last presentation is going to be in November. Okay. So it's really cool that we have been 2 years in a row together, kind of like learning from one another and kind of increasing our capacity through the things that we have learned in this series. So welcome to everyone that is here. If there is some new people that want to have access to the old presentations, Katie usually sends an email with the links to the presentations, and this one is recorded, so you get recording of it, along with a copy of the presentation and follow-up documents that you may need. So let's talk about kind of what are the principles we like to observe when we are together. I always review these. We want to be present, make sure that we are acquiring as much as we want, as we can. We can, cooperate, share our thoughts, make sure that we are participating and give our opinions. As I usually say in every workshop, is we all learn from each other. I'm here to learn from you as well. And when we share experiences is when it tends to be the time that we learn the most. And of course, when we share experiences, sometimes we may share things that are sensitive. So we want to have a safe space for everybody in which they feel people can open up about what their challenges and joys are. And so that we are going to keep, our conversations in a way that everybody feels accepted. That's why I always end my little bullet point there with practicing yes and. If you have different opinions about something, it is okay. We try not to use the word but because that keeps people like you feel rejected when you hear yes but. So we say yes and just to make sure that everybody's opinion is being counted in. For people that are remote, I tend not to be able to see you most of the time when you are on the other side. So if you have any questions, just speak up. If you want to participate, just speak up. I don't get to see the chat that much because I'm managing the PowerPoint and the connection here. So it's a lot of things to manage at the same time. So if you want to say something, want to share, please just unmute yourselves and speak. We're going to take one break during this presentation. The presentation goes until 2. Hopefully I won't go too past 2. I tend to have a lot of information and sometimes I go a little too long. Restrooms for the people that are here on the hallway on the right. You will be receiving PowerPoints and supporting documents. And also we will be asking you for your feedback through a survey. When we get feedback, we really get to improve on the next presentations that we're doing. So what to cover today? So we are going to start with a grant checklist. The things that you should be checking before you even apply for a grant to evaluate whether a grant is the right match for you and your organization. We are going to talk about guides, like things that you should be thinking about when you are writing for a grant that is project-based. I'm not talking about grants that are operational, meaning that they will give you money for the whole organization independently of what you use it for. These are for project-based grants, which tend to be the most common ones, right? It's really hard to find operational money. It's easier to apply for a project and it's very specific. In between these conversations, we are going to talk about MOUs and LOIs, um, what they are and what are they used for. We are going then to have a break, and then we're going to talk about your grant catalog. Like, what are the things that we all should have handy to apply for every grant? Because most of the grants will tend to ask similar questions. Then we are going to talk about measuring impact because that's the key part here in grant writing, right? How do you present the impact that you are going to have in the community and how are you going to measure it? And I'm going to like also talk about RBAs and why they are a good way of measuring impact. What are the good things about using RBAs versus other ways of measuring? And for those of you that don't know what an RBA is, I will explain it. All right, so let's get going. We have a lot of information to check in, and so I'm gonna close this a little bit. And what we are going to start talking about is the fact that not all grants are created equal. And I remember having, when I was an executive director, I had a board that said, it's asking you the same. Why don't you just answer like, because grant writing can take a lot of time. And I was like, actually, no. And even if they are asking the same questions, they ask it in a different way. So you have to be like super good at kind of like working with the information you have and knowing where to put it and so on. Also, grants can be very different in, the time that it takes for you to apply, the funding that they offer you. And it's always important when you are going to apply for a grant, it's kind of to find the balance there, right? Which grants are going to be the ones that I'm going to invest time in, and which ones are the grants that we are not necessarily, we're going to let pass because they are time consuming or the chances of us getting that grant may be lower. Um, that is hard because when there is so much need in the community, we are tempted to apply to anything that comes our way. But the best use of your time is really to be very selective about what grants you're going to be applying for and which ones you are going to let go or apply later on when they're a better fit. So things that you want to look at when you are looking at a grant, whether it's a government grant or foundation or a private organization grant, is what is the eligibility criteria? What are they asking you to have? There's different kinds of nonprofit statuses, right? So where do you fit? Whether they are asking that you serve people in certain location, does that fit the or not only people that you have a program in certain location, right? Because we have museums and organizations that are serving animal rights and so on. So it's not only about people; it's about what you're doing. If the geographical location is limited, or if the grants are for a specific demographic group. Last time we had our last session, we had, I don't know if they're here today, but we had stepping stones, and they were saying how it was for them to focus on what to talk about because they do so many different things. And I think that's the reality for most organizations. So when you're thinking about the people that you're serving, who do you serve and how does it fit within that grant? You may be serving families and that grant may be only for children. So how do you fit that within the scope that the grant is asking you to do? Also, it's super important to align mission and programs. This seems obvious, but not everybody really gets that. And I've seen a lot of organizations applying for programs that they don't run normally because they want, to have that income come in. So then they go ahead and create another program that is totally out of the scope with what they usually do. Of course, if you get the money, it's great, but that ends up hurting you over time because then your mission starts becoming diluted. You're doing like many, many different things that weren't the original mission of the organization. And if things evolve over time, it's a good time for you to meet with your board of directors and say, okay, should we take a look at our strategy on where we are today versus where we started 20 years ago? Have we changed with time and where are we today? That's when organizations do strategic planning, and many times as they upgrade, they change their mission statements, they change their vision statements and so on because they have changed over time organically. So that's something really important to consider. You want to be aligned with what you're asking money for. Also, the timeline for the grant. Is this something that I'm going to have to rush and send in 3 weeks because I just learned from it? Is it a timeline that fits my budget? Um, how does it look like when it comes to the time in which they give me the money versus the time I'm supposed to execute? We gotta have a lot of clarity on that because some grants work on a year calendar, others work on a fiscal calendar. And so that can be that you are applying for something that runs yearly from January to December when your finances and all your programs are being run from June to July. So, or July to June, sorry. So it is important to kind of keep in mind whether the grant timeline fits what you want to do. Let's say, for example, the grant is already almost November, right? And the grant wants you to start a program in January. Is it doable? It's not only about applying for the grant and getting the money, it's also about are you going to be able to put that program together real quick so that you can use the money effectively and how the grant is asking you to use it. So timeline is super, super important. Also, the overall process. Hi, welcome.
How are you?
Hi.
Sorry.
No, okay.
Apologies, I was out circling the block.
No worries. There is another chair back there. So, also the overall process, how complicated it is. For example, some grants may want you to apply, and especially if you are renewing grants or there are funders that have funded you before, you will go straight to the grant. Some may have letter of intent first, and then they select, who goes to the next phase, and then you apply for the grant. Some grants require to have a visit to the schools and have a meeting with the leadership of the organization. You might want to gather from the beginning what is the overall process and how many steps are involved in me applying for this grant and evaluate, right? The time that it takes you to go through the whole process versus the funding that you are going to get. If you get a very complicated grant and what you're going to get is $5,000, you may want to evaluate whether all the time being spent only applying for the grant and going through the process is going to be worth those $5,000. One thing I always tell people: think about your time like it's money. Every time you think about a project and how much time you're gonna invest, make the addition. How much staff time is this whole thing before we even get started going to cost me? And is it worth it at this point for me? Also, the sustainability but of the grant. We're going to talk about sustainability of projects, but I'm talking about sustainability of the grant at this point. Is this a grant that is only a one-time grant? Is this a grant that is going to offer the opportunity to renew it over the years? For example, many times some grants are like, a 1-year grant and you have to hire staff and you hire those staff letting them know that they are bound by this grant. And once the grant is over, right, they're gonna, you may feed them somewhere else or you may not have a job for them anymore. So it's important to evaluate whether that grant is going to be sustainable and whether as you move along, there will be other sources of funding that are sustainable. Sometimes one-time grants can be really good if you are using it for operational and general funds. If the grants are asking you to give them a new project and it's still something new and they're going to fund you only for a year, then you end up in a really bad place because then you want to continue having the program and you have no funding for it. So those are the things that you want to look when you are looking at the grants. Other aspects of it are what are the financial terms and the grant size? The size of the grant is important because, as I said before, if it's a small grant and it requires a lot of work, you may want to kind of like consider whether you want to do that. But also, financial terms are something to look into. When do they disburse the money? For example, it happens a lot with contracts we may have in state grants or federal grants that they pay after you have done the job, and then they take 3 months to pay for that grant, and then something changes and don't know about the change until like 2 months before you are like you're actually currently running this program. And I think that, it's important to take a look at a consideration on that because it may affect your cash flow. If you have an organization that has a lot of reserves and the board is very open about using the reserves when you need it, you're in a very different position that if you are working and you're doing paycheck by paycheck as the money comes. So sometimes grants may limit you in that sense, and you want to be sure you want to make sure that the financial terms do feed the cash flow for your organization. That the money is going to come in when you need it, not after you did all the work and you have gone through very difficult times trying to pay the staff for the time. Also, like attached to that is the reporting obligations. What kind of reports do you need to send? Are they quarterly? Are they yearly? Are they reports, do you require to send 2 reports a year? Can have a good outcome in the sense that you keep an eye on the program all the time because you have to report more often. Yet sometimes reporting may be a little bit more work than you expected. And for example, I know because I know most of us work in small nonprofits, we have very limited resources regarding like who's managing our data, who's managing our IT. So if you have a new grant that is asking you for all this reporting that you don't have the capacity to do, you may want to think about it as well. One of the things that I always think about when we talk about grant funding for government and money is that they require a different kind of reporting than most of the grants do. And you really need to have someone in the staff that specializes in knowing like that report and how they're going to want the information. So it's really key for you to understand what is your capacity in that sense as well. I repeated one, it's the same thing I said before. Also the competition, something important to look into. How many people are applying for that grant? Is there a lot of competition? Do I really have chances of making it through? If you have a really, really good program, you may want to take the risk, but if it's a highly competitive, you may want to think about it if you are not quite ready yet. One thing you will always get is the learning experience. So if you want to apply for a grant and it doesn't quite work out, there are ways in which you can request feedback. And as you know, you grow it more, you will be able to kind of, do better. So there is some time investment that may be worth it if you want to consider it. But if there are like really huge grants and there is a lot of competitors, I don't know. I kind of like recently I've been talking to an organization that has some money, but it's only for New York. And if there is extra money, they will give it to Connecticut. And I'm like, this is a lot of work for a maybe. So I need to talk to them a little more and understand because they keep asking you information. Of course, they want to have all their ducks in a row, make sure they have all the information in case that extra money appears and it comes. But then in the meantime, you are providing a lot of information with something that you don't know if it's even going to happen. And last but not least, your administrative capacity. I mentioned this again. Full grants require to have some administrative kind of person that makes sure that puts all the pieces together. And I'm not only talking about the grant writer. I'm talking the person that manages the data for your programs. I'm talking about the people that are presenting the results, even the program people who are doing the follow-up surveys with your participants and processing all of that. So grants can be a lot of administration, and I have to say, most grants do not pay for that, right? We get mostly grants that are paying only for the program, and they are not paying for the overhead and the other pieces that are. So when you get, general operation funds, those are the people that you want to thank very much because they are the ones that really allow you to do your work. Otherwise, it's a program doesn't come like just with the action of running a program. It comes with lights, water, salaries, tables, toilet paper, exactly, computers, and so on, internet connection. I mean, there is so much that it takes for us to be able to make these programs work. So those are the things that you want to have as a checklist as soon as you start evaluating whether a grant is worth for you to apply for or not. I wonder if anybody in the group or at home or wherever you are has, anything else that they would like to add to this list. Anything that we haven't thought of yet. And for the people that are remotely, please just speak up.
I'll make a suggestion. If you have access to a database that shares information about an organization you want to apply from, it's often helpful, even if you just Google them, so you can find out a little more about their process, procedure, and who they funded in the past, which can give you a guide to whether it is worth your efforts.
Thank you, Michelle. That's great. Anything else that you think you can think of? And like, if you think about something later, you can tell me too. All right. So let's move into
Oh, you know what? I do have a question
Yes.
about end of year reporting.
uh-huh,
So this is what you already covered it, reporting obligations.
uh-huh,
Right. And the financial forms.
right. Some grants ask you to report like twice a year. Some grants ask you to report when you apply for the next grant. So you are submitting the report in the next application,
Right.
especially if you are renewing. So it all depends, and that's something that you have to have clear and set it in your calendar in advance and know when the reporting is coming up. We will talk a little bit about gathering data and what we have talked about the best practices in data, but how you can talk to your staff about it as well. Because staff are an essential part of like grant writing, and they may not be as familiar with everything that is involved with grant writing. I will definitely advise people to train your staff on grants, know how to write a grant, but so they understand the scope and everything that is included. We tend to have staff members who want to do good work, and they just want to do good work, but they don't want to keep track of data. They don't want to this is like, why is this relevant to me? I just want to help people. But in order to help people and actually pay your salaries, we need to have this information.
So what are the tax ramifications for carryover into the next fiscal year?
I don't tax ramifications. I mean, as a nonprofit, you will be tax exempt, but you may want to check with the grant giver whether you can carry over funds from one to the next. Sometimes they would, if you don't have time to finish the project, they may be flexible on letting you continue the program even if you haven't finished. That's why it's so important to kind of like continually have that talk with your donors and the grant givers. Just keep them updated on what you're doing and how things are working out. I think nowadays most organizations that give money are more in sync of like understanding why like things may not necessarily work out right away, but it's important to keep them informed, and when they don't know, educate them on what are the challenges and what are the things that you need as an organization. Also, one thing that I am going to mention here regarding organization and so on, and I have talked about it when we talk about donors. Many organizations that are giving money have very good intentions. They also have more members, and they also have people that evaluate whether they're going to give the money to you or not. Many times they may not understand the needs of the community that you are serving. So it's your job to really educate them through the grant writing process on what kind of things are important for the people that you're serving. People may ask well-intentioned questions, but they don't understand the whole scope. So sometimes they ask questions that are totally out of very out of how you measure your success. So it is important to be very proactive at educating the people that are getting the grants. And if you have a site visit, that's a really good moment in time to educate it and tell them stories and talk about how things work for your constituents. Okay, so here are a few tips about the things that you should be doing when you are applying for project-based grants. Like Michelle said, research your funder. And you put it so well, Michelle. See who they give to. What is it that motivates them? What is it that they feel that it's important to give to? over time, we have had, well, this has happened for a while, a switch in organization wanting to give money to things that look like the business they have. For example, banks in the past used to give to everybody. Now banks are giving mostly for financial literacy programs and things that are aligned with what they do. And other than contributing with money, they want to contribute with support and knowledge. So many times you may have to engage a bank when you are writing a grant for them in getting them into other activities that you have. That's something important to consider as well. So do your research for your funder and figure out, what is it that motivates them to give, what's their giving history, and you can even get to, how many board members they have, who will be deciding what board member is in there. Maybe you know somebody in the board and that are formed already of your organization. You may have better chances if you have a good representative there because they know you, right? And also align your project. Make sure that your priorities are aligned with the priorities of the funder at the same time. When you apply for a grant, please follow your guidelines precisely as they ask you to. You may lose points if you don't follow the guides the same way they're asking you to answer. Many organizations now have an online application. You go in and you can use maximum 1,500 characters, and they will cut your sentences if you kind of like submit and don't look at those guidelines. So usually, if you want to do well, I will advise you to do a draft that follows all the guidelines, and then go into the space where you are supposed to send the answers and paste your answers, already knowing that you have look at their guidelines and instructions. Also use the correct forms. Many times organizations are asking you for different kinds of forms to fill in for different kind of information. Sometimes they have a form that is only about your organization and another form that is about the program that you're running. You want to make sure that you have a good understanding before you even engage into writing. What does the whole picture look like for this? I know a grant manager that every time we send her a grant, she goes and looks at nitpicks about, okay, these deliverables they're going to ask us for, you want to be careful before applying, because are you going to be able to do this? And that's actually a very good practice. But also, most of the time, they will ask you to send things that are standard, and we'll talk about that from your grants. So things like budgets and tax returns, or things like, your board list, and all your policies, whistleblower, DEI policies, everything you have, and you have to collect all that information to submit with the grant. So you want to make sure you keep it orderly and you are able to even like bank transfers, right? The form that you use so that they can send you the money. These are things that you want to know in advance and have already ready before you even try to submit. I know we are all pressed with time. I know that grant is due on January 5th and it's 11:55 and people are submitting grants. We are all pressed with time, so you better be ready and have everything that you need way in advance. And also meet the deadlines, right? Everybody is a fair game. So for a funder to have to give you a couple of extra days to submit your grant, it's not such a good thing. So make sure that you are keeping an eye on your deadlines way, way ahead. All right. So grants usually have something called something called executive summary. The executive summary is like when you write an essay for college. It's the first paragraph that tells everybody what you're talking about and how you got there and how you're gonna, it's going to end. Because it encompasses the whole thing, I will give you the tip to write it at the end, even though it tends to be the first question that they want you to see. First, you can write your grant, the whole thing. You analyze it, see what parts are important to come up with for the executive summary, and then you write the executive summary at the end. What funders wants to know is like, what is the problem statement? What's the statement of need or the problem that you are trying to resolve? In this area, the things that you want to talk about and the things that you want to do research on are the, what is happening in the bigger picture. For example, if you are talking about education, you want to talk in general about what are the challenges for children to reach reading level by grade 3, right? You want to talk about what is generally happening in your environment that you are trying to resolve with this program locally. If you are trying to feed people, if you are trying to give them housing, what are the bigger issues that are happening at the state level or in the country? That's when you want to zip in and kind of talk about the problem as the bigger picture. And the reason why you want to talk about the problem in the bigger picture is that when a funder funds you, they do not only want to know how you are going to help the people that you're going to help, they also want to know how that help is going to trickle into the rest of the community and benefit the community as a whole. So if you look at the bigger picture and talk about what's the bigger problem, you may be able to present a good statement of need. Then you will talk about who will be the people that will be directly benefited by this initiative. Who are you serving? You want to be as precise as possible as well. For example, if you're going to present a program for children, but the program is only for preschoolers. Don't say we're going to do a program for children. We're going to say we're going to do a program for 2 to 4 years old. And this is the specific population that I'm going to be helping in this initiative. The more precise you are, the more chances you have that the funder will look at your proposal in a very favorable way because they understand that you know exactly what you are trying to accomplish. And then, of course, how is it going to benefit the larger community? Let's say for example, you serve families as a whole. Now, with this one, you're going to be serving this small section of preschool children only. But how is this going to benefit the rest of the family and the other people that you're serving in the community? So it's like the small picture and the big picture. And the more precise you are, the better. I have read a lot of grant applications that repeat themselves a lot. And now we have like a lot of AI tools that can be very helpful regarding, summarizing and making things a little bit more tight. So my favorite is Grammarly. I think it does very good job. I trust it better than ChatGPT, and I think it does a very good job at summarizing things and making sure that if you say do a bullet point instead of this long narrative, it will do that. So you want to be precise because people don't have a lot of time for reading. So fluffy, don't fluff it up.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, I apologize. My name's Nicole.
No apologies needed. So Grammarly is the AI tool that I think I like best. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It started as an AI that or a software that was fixing your grammar, and kind of I used it a lot because English is my second language, so it was very helpful for me to read better. And then it has evolved to provide other tools that are artificial intelligence, and it helps you summarize, make things more brief, make things more clear. So, and they have a free version and a paid version. Right. Okay. Other things that you want to talk about. So when you send your narrative, which is going to be like the main part of the grant normally, right? You want to talk about the why, the what, and the how. Those are kind of like the questions that you want to ask. So when you give an overview of the project, which tends to be like the meat of the grant, you want to talk, why is that approach that you're taking effective? You want to talk about the length of the project. It's a 1 year, multi-year project, and so on. You want to talk straight away, like, what is it that your real needs to continue this program and make it grow? Even if the grant is saying, okay, we'll give you this money this year, and then we'll see, you want to put it forward right away. Whether the program that you are applying for is scalable, right? Whether you can grow it with time. If you have a pilot, whether it can be developed over time and become a bigger thing. is it sustainable? And this is one of my when grant makers ask whether your program is sustainable, what they are asking you is like, can you keep doing this project without me giving you the money? And I tend to be like, it's sustainable if you continue supporting us, right? Because like if they want you to get a program going, like, how are you gonna sustain it over time? And you know, people try to be as economic as possible and try to be like, you know, as creative as possible. But really sustainability comes from people, you know, giving you money. That's how nonprofits work. That's one of the funniest questions. How are you gonna make it sustainable? Well, you're gonna keep helping me every year, and then we'll make it sustainable.
So do you have an approach that would be a good way when a funder asks for that? Because do you be honest and say you'll have to look for other funders to support the program?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things I tend to do is to say, well, with your support over the years, we will be able to sustain this program. You know, it is important we can try to engage other donors to continue helping us grow, but your support is essential for us to continue, you know, engaging in this program. And so, yes, I'd be honest with it.
Because I would think that they would want to know, they don't want to give money to a program that's going to fail, and then it, you know, it's basically throwing money out the door.
Absolutely. And it's funny because there are different types of givers. Sometimes some givers want to give to very strong organizations that have a lot of money. Because if those organizations have a lot of money, they know that their money is going to be used safely and well. And some other givers want to give to small nonprofit organizations that are having challenges running their programs because they believe in to invest in. So there is donors for all kinds of organizations. And when they ask the question about sustainability, they're maybe asking, are you going to need more help? Like that may be behind their question. Or is it like, do you have kind of like enough money to continue supporting this program, even if we were to disappear tomorrow? So you got to look at it. And that's where, like Michelle said, investigating and learning about the funder is so important because then you see what the giving looks like and who they give to over and over again. And also, what other kind of support and collaboration will you need for that program? We tend, like, no, we don't. Like, administrators know this, but staff members tend to think about the programs as a silo. Run this program and we're going to use all the resources we have in the office to make it run. So we only need this little money to make it happen, right? You want to make sure that your grants are reflecting that this work is going to require IT support, it's going to require new space, it's going to require, you know, that it's not only about buying the toys for the kids and helping them have a good Christmas. It's about the whole machinery that takes for you to get to that day of Christmas giving. And all the stuff that is going to help, you know, make that happen. So, you know, always think about your overhead. And if you are able to put it in the grant, and if they allow you to, please do. Don't forget about that. Like I've said it 100 times. Staff is not only the person, it's a desk, it's a computer, it's the light over, you know, their heads. And then also, who are you going to collaborate if you have partners? Now, collaboration can be challenging at times. And I think it is mostly because we are all very pressed by it, right? Everybody's trying to do 1,000 things. There's always more need than the resources we have. So if you're going to pick your partners, pick them carefully and make sure you engage into a good conversation of what the partnership is going to look like. Grants love partnerships. They do. But making partnerships work can be very, you know, at times can be difficult. And it's not because of no good intentions. It's just that there are so many priorities and everybody's being stretched super thin. So since we're going to talk about partners, I'm going to go a little bit ahead and we're going to talk about the MOU. I'll tell you a little story. When I just started working on or nonprofit. I had a meeting with somebody that was going to be our partner, right? And I was very new at this. They wanted me because I was the bilingual counselor and I knew people. I knew the people that we were serving. So I sit and I talk about this with this executive director, and she keeps talking about the MOU and the MOU, and I'm like, what's she talking about? What is an MOU? So then, of course, it was many years ago, so Google wasn't Google the way it was. So for me, I was like, I have to remember this thing that she kept saying. And so I wrote it somewhere, MOU, and I had to find out what an MOU was. So, you know, that's what we do a lot in nonprofit. We talk about all these things that we think everybody knows, but not everybody knows. So an MOU is a memorandum of understanding, and basically it's a contract, a good faith contract between you and the partner that is going to outline who is going to do what and how. I will advise you that you get into a habit that any partner you have has an MOU with you. Even if they're not working in a program that is specific with you at this moment, just to have an understanding of what what each party will be doing. Even if you're just referring clients back and forth, there is a clear understanding that you're working with this organization and you are working in a partnership. Why do you want to have that? Because when when new opportunities for grants present themselves, you already have this partner that you're engaged with formally. So it's easier for you to approach them and say, would you like to work on this project together? Now, another thing that happens, oops, I learned. There's an alert. Another thing that happens often, when people are writing grants very last minute, they put a partner in the grant and the partner is not even aware they were there. That's something you want to be super careful with as well. You want to check with people beforehand. In my work, I get approached all the time with like, oh, this project with you. Okay, what is it about? They haven't even fully fleshed what the grant is going to look like or what the project is going to look like. It's very hard to engage in that because if you don't know what you are going to be doing, it's just not doable. Like you're getting yourself into trouble. You may end up getting yourself in a situation in which they're going to give you some of the money, right? But you may end up reporting in things that you are not prepared to report. So it's very important, and that's what the MOU reflects the commitment between the two organizations to work together.
So could I just ask a quick question? Is that just a document that say one side would put together or both sides would sign?
Exactly. So the partner that is more experienced in MOUs generally has some sort of a
Standard.
exact standard for a template, and you review it and make sure that you are okay with the partners. So the good ways to use an MOU is partnerships and collaborations. Outlines the role of each part and what's the scope of the collaboration, or if you have joint programs or projects. So how are the resources going to be used? Who's going to be doing what? Who's going to be putting a staff to do this? Who's going to put a staff to do this other thing? So, and it also talks about the project timeline and other details like that. MOUs can take a while until people get into an agreement that is going to be done. So that's something that you want to tackle early on. That's why your timeline for applying for grants is so important, because this is not something that you can whip in a week. It really has to take its time, especially if you're going to be working with a partner. So usually the parts of an MOU is an introduction, who is involved, what parties, what is the purpose of the project and the MOU, what are the roles and responsibility, what is going to be the duration, terms and conditions, resources, always include a confidentiality clause, and a signature certificate. So those are kind of the parts of the MOU.
So will this be part of the deck that will be disputed?
Yes. Yes, feel free to take a picture, but we will be sending all of this. Okay, so we made our little stop in the MOU. So we talked about partners and so on. The other thing that you want to include are super clear outcomes on what you are expecting is going to come out of this project. So you want to speak about what kind of methodology you're gonna use to collect results. Are you going to like count the number of people, or are you gonna follow up with a survey for people? These are the things that if you have super clear, will put your grant on top of the pile because you have clarity on how you're gonna report back and how you know, what you are expecting. What are your outcomes for the people that you're serving and for the larger community? If you remember to include these pieces, you will have a very impressive graph. Because most people tend to speak only about the immediate result, and grant givers wants to see kind of the bigger picture. And what is the impact? And again, RBAs is result-based accountability. It's a model that is used a lot for reporting back. And on the second part, we will be talking specifically about those. So,
okay, what's the acronym mean again?
result-based accountability.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it means that you know you are accountable for the results that you have in your, and RBAs can be a lot of fun. If you think about it. So hopefully you leave ecstatic about RBAs. Because the thing about RBAs is that you don't have to measure everything. You have to be very selective about what you're measuring and stick with it. So, all right. Things. Budget. Again, you gotta consider all your expenses when you're thinking about budgets. You have to detail every cost. If there's gonna be travel included, if there's gonna be food included, if there's gonna be, I don't know, umbrellas that you have to buy for people to stand in the rain while they're ready to get, you have to include all of that. Technology, that's benefits. Everything that goes in it, do a good thinking game, go around the office, see who your collaborators are and what they can think of. It's better to have more than less because you can always cut your budget later. But it's very hard to put only the minimal and then add later. So if you have like a limit, they're gonna only sponsor you for $10,000. You wanna have, I don't know, $14,000 in your budget, and yet then you decide what are the things that you could put into general operations, right? But it's better to have more than less. You gotta justify the cost and how is it gonna be used. And one great thing that you can include is all the in-kind contributions. If you are getting things for free, well, nothing is free in life, but let's say things that you don't have to pay with money for, include them in the grant because they present leverage, right? Let's say, for example, you are applying to, I don't know, start a new program for kids, a new after-school program. If somebody's donating the food for the kids, the snacks, you wanna know, if it's a partner, let's say an organization that gives food to kids, you wanna include them as a partner and how much they're gonna be putting. If it's just a donor that wants to give the snacks to the kids, you wanna know exactly how much they're giving you. That also gives you a lot of leverage because the grants see that you are obtaining resources from other places as well.
So I see that you have benefits. Do you mean health benefits?
Yeah, anything that it goes included. Remember, the person not only comes with their body and their abilities, they also come with other things that need to be included. And if the grants allow you to, that's the one thing that I think is good about federal and government grants. They always allow you to put those kind of costs in there. So you want to make sure that you are not only talking about the staff salary. When you put the salaries, you're talking about how much their healthcare you're contributing to, what is the cost of social security, all the other expenses that you have in an employee, make sure you include them in there.
So is the federal government the only one that allows that, or does the state?
That state, federal, and some other grants that are more comprehensive will allow you to put that as well.
Okay.
Grants by foundations, they usually, it's give and take. Yeah, it depends. Yeah. The thing about the federal and the state grants is that they ask you to account for every minute the person is working and what project they're working towards. So the reporting can be very complicated because if you have a same staff member that is working for 3 different projects, then you have to present like reports on where they use their time. So, but you can include their benefits and things like that. Lisa, you have a lot of experience on that. Is there anything you want to add?
Essentially, when we've worked with partners, it's, they can provide us with what they think the value of the service that they're giving the community is.
Mhm.
And that is very key for some grants where, especially where they're looking for matching leverage.
Mhm.
If you want to ask for X amount of money, then you have to come up with a 25% match. So being able to go to our partners and say, hi. And then, you look at that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're gonna do is show expertise, how we're gonna manage and how we're gonna sustain the plan as well. That's important. And you want to leverage partnerships, community involvement, leverage your board representation. Grants will usually ask you if boards give, and you want to say yes, they give, and they also participate in our activities. So you want to make sure you leverage that. And of course, letters of support, which you also have to get like way in advance. Don't be asking for letters of support last minute. If you need to ask for a letter of support, send it to the person that is supporting already written. They can make the modifications and sign it for you. We will make everybody's life easier.
So who provides letters of support? Board members?
Let's example, the police is applying for a grant because they do also apply for things, and they need the support of organizations saying yes, I've worked with them, and they're great. They have helped our community. Those are the things that you want to look into. You want to edit for clarity, proofread, check for consistency of your grants. You want to support your claims with good data. Cite your sources if you're using data that is not yours. You want to engage the reader and use a logical flow. In other words, think about if I don't know anything about this program, what would be the way that I can speak about it that will make a person understand it from beginning to end?
Can I ask you a question? Going back to the board, and yes, they financially contribute, and you definitely want to say that. You said something else after that I missed.
Yeah, if they participate in your programs as well. So let's say, for example, the day you distribute the toys, they come and help. They dress as Santa. They are active participants of what you're doing. Yeah, you may want to. Or even like if you're applying for a grant that will help you expand your racial equity and inclusion things. How is the board supporting that? You want to kind of like speak about what are the actual actions that the board is doing to support the work.
Thank you.
Before you send it, ask for feedback. Give it to people who do not have any idea about the program and ask them to read it so that they can say, oh, understand this part. If they can understand that part, you may have to fix it because chances are that the people that are giving you the grant may not understand it unless they are very well versed in what you do, right? And learn from rejections. Whenever you get a rejection on a grant, ask for a meeting and ask them, I really would like to get your feedback, what we could have done better. Sometimes they're gonna say, no, we just didn't have enough money. Other times they say, well, yeah, I can actually give you some feedback and tell you about what could have been done better in this grant. Okay, so it's 1:27. I'm gonna give you a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 1:30. I can't believe it's already 5 hours. Time flies when you're having fun. So
It does.
we will be back in 5 minutes.
I know, I apologize about it.
As I told Kenny that I'm going to March.
All of your flash.
Yeah. All right, let's see if we can make this happen without a power in my other computer. So things that you have to have in your catalog of narratives. Each organization may ask you for things a little bit differently, but most organizations are going to ask you or grants for your general organization information as you come through. So you can create literally a catalog of answers that you're gonna use all the time. And if you have different lengths of the same answer, you have a short version, a long version, and a longer version, you may be able to have your answers ready, so it will save you a lot of time. So things that should be included in your catalog are mission, vision, and values. Intro to the organization. Basically, this is the organization and this is what we do. A little bit of the history of the organization. A lot of the organizations want to know, especially if they come for the first time to you, what are you all about? How were you born? Like, what was it that it prompted to create the organization? The organization history, the target population that you serve. In this part, you include everybody that you're serving, right? Because it's about the whole organization. What kind of partnerships do you have? What is unique about your organization? What makes you different? Why are you providing this service at this moment in time? The volunteers, how are your volunteers engaging with your programs? The board, talk about the roles, the responsibilities, the participation, whether they contribute financially or in kind. You may want to have a narrative for that as well. You want to have a set of all the policies your organization has, from whistleblower to DEI to conflict of interest, and your organizational budget. These are things you want to have in a catalog. You want to make sure you have them all the time. The one computer. The next thing that you want to do is talk about your strengths and challenges. I really want you to think about what the challenges are and don't be shy about it, because this is where you're gonna get the support for the things that you really need. Sometimes we're very engaged in telling only the good stories and what is really working. But if we talk about the challenges, there are more chances first that we are more real. Not everything is, roses. Also, that people engage more into helping you with the things that you are the challenges that you're facing. And it can be the collaboration can be in so many different ways. I mean, I'm sure you have faced a situation in which you have a grant review, and some of the people that come to review your grant, which tend to be volunteers, are engaged with other people in the community that can help you with other things. So it's a way to kind of like network and talk about what is it that you need. What kind of framework do you use to measure impact? You want to have that already written as well. What are your yearly goals? What are your trends and changes? You want to have the bias of your leadership and probably your program directors as well, or program managers. You want to have those handy, because they usually ask you, who's going to be this program? What kind of expertise do they have? And you want to have that. What is your strategy for revenue? Sometimes they ask questions about how do you review your employees and their performance. And sometimes they ask you about how do you provide professional training for your staff. So those are things that are easy to talk about. There are also a lot of questions around what kind of DEI initiatives do you have. And these are things that you can have already written and ready to go. Especially if you do them in different lengths, then you make your life easier. It's a lot of work in the beginning, but then it will save you time. So I'm gonna move into talking about RBAs and what they are. And like I said before, these are result-based accountabilities. And the key question for RBAs is, who are you helping? And who are you helping in, or what are we really helping? And it's not only about people, like I said before, it's different initiatives, right? But how are we helping in the short term and how are we helping in the long term? And those are the two key questions that RBAs are going to be seeking from you, because they want to work on what is going to be the bigger change community-wide. So the RBAs come from a writer. Her name actually is he is an expert, and his first publication on RBAs was in 2005. And this person, Matt Friedman, created this model to measure success and impact in different organizations. So that's the book. And now it has become something that is used all over the country. And in Proprio Quantity particularly, there are a lot of organizations that are using RBAs as measuring of success. So they think about, when you think about long and short-term success, or when you think about the individual versus the community, and I have here immigration issues as examples. For example, you may be talking about the immigrants are learning more English, they're obtaining the legal status, they're reasonably compensated for their work. So that's the individual that you're serving specifically, but how is the community being helped at that work that you are helping? For example, most students reach a standardized reading level because we are helping these families. And so kids, this is something that is going to benefit the whole community, is helping schools. Or most immigrants are providing more options for jobs, other immigrants in the community. So when you think about the impact that you are creating for your programs, is how does that impact extend into the larger community? Now, one of the things that indicates different kinds of work, and let me move a couple of, I'm gonna move this to this slide and then I'll go back. The three questions that you basically have to answer when you use an RPA is how much did you do? How well did you do it? And is anybody better off? How much did you do and how well did you do it are things that you have more control of. And these are things that tend to be numbers, right? I did 10 classes of 5 sessions each, and we had this many people participating on these classes, this many people graduated. Those are things that you keep track of constantly. Now, is anyone better off? Can be a little bit more tricky because this requires that you track things over time and you track how is your program influencing and making people's or situations better, right? So I'll give you a few examples. It may seem a little confusing at this point, but I have this graphic here that's going to help show a little bit more. Let me see, let me make it small. So when you talk about how much did you do, it's important, but it's not difficult to collect. The more you move to is anybody better off, it's more difficult to collect, but at the same time, it's more impactful, right? Because I'm sure you can also all know the difference between somebody taking a class and just coming to class versus somebody being able to obtain a job because of the classes they took. So that's the difference. It's the action of what you do versus the, what is it that is more important for people in the long term and the community in the long term.
Sorry, hold on. What's the difference between how well did you do it and is anyone better off? Can you just talk about that?
If you think about how well did you do, is how did you run your program and it was successful. So, for example, let's say you recruited 30 people for a class and you were able to retain 28 people. That's how well did you do. Is anybody better off? Is how people improve their lives as a result of these things that you did so well. So sometimes it can be confusing because, for example, if you have someone that is registering for a class and they finish all the class, you have to figure out what is important for them of taking the class other than getting a job, right? Sometimes you can help by improving people's self-confidence. And they are better off after they leave the class. They may not get the job, but they feel more confident about the skills they have. And they may be feeling like more motivated to take other classes. So these are the things where you want to be talking to the people that you're serving and really understanding what is important for them and how these classes are affecting or whatever you're doing and affected their life in a positive way. Okay, I keep doing the same thing. So like I was saying before, you have more control about what you do in your program than how people end up. And that's kind of like the key of the matter here. So in one sense, having 2 areas that are all about under your control is very positive the last area is the one that is more difficult to identify. So when you think about it, if you were to put it in a quadrant like this, when you think about how much you do, it has to do with effort and quantity. It's basically, I did this many activities, and this is the number of activities, and this is the number of people that came, and this is the number of sessions we had, and this is, it's basically numbers. When you think about how well did you do, it's about quality and effort. So you think about, you know, the quality of my classes was so good that people were super satisfied with it, right? So when I sent my surveys out after the class was done, most people were satisfied with the class, most people were satisfied with the customer service, most people were satisfied with the food they received. You know, the quality of the work plus the effort you did. When you think about is anybody better off, is the effect on the quantity and the quality of life that they have. So effects may be, for example, because of the food program that we had this week, our participants were able to not to be so worried about finding a job because we were providing them with food, and they were able to engage their families into doing other activities. Or, for example, because of the, I don't know, the vaccines we gave this year, right? That we had 30 people register and 28 people came, and they felt that the program was efficient and move on. People felt that they were very prepared for the winter, right? So the thing that is difficult about is anybody better off is that it requires you to do follow-up after the fact that you provided the services. But if you are able to get that information from the participants that you are serving, you will be able to show a lot of the impact that you have had. And like I said before, impact is not necessarily what our funders believe impact is. It's what our participants believe impact is for their own lives. I'm sure you're quite familiar with a lot of financial literacy classes, and people put together these programs that are like with the goal of incentivizing people and getting them to a better financial place. That doesn't always happen because people have other challenges. You may be super prepared with your budget, and then your car breaks and you are back to where you started, right? You are back into credit card debt and so on. There are so many things that are out of your hands. So when funders are asking for things like that, it's your job to educate it and say, actually what it is important for the people that we are serving is that even though they know they are going to go through a hard time for a while, at least they have the knowledge on how to make things better for their lives. And this is a stepping stone to getting them to where they need to be as they continue progressing on their own journey. We all know that people's and entities and all journeys are not a straightforward path. Nobody goes to school, and well, very little number of people goes to school, choose a career, then go to that career, and then they buy a house, and then they have kids. And that's the story we like to tell ourselves, but for most people, it doesn't happen that way, right? Our lives tend to be in circles and things that happen over and over again, and we try again. And that's why it's so important that you know the people that you're serving and understand their stories. So that comes to the other piece of talking about measuring impact. When it comes to measuring impact in your grants, it's not only about numbers and the effect that had in people, is also about the stories that you tell about how this person progressed and all the hoops they were able to jump over time. So here I have a few examples on what does it look like. Okay, I'm gonna do something real quick here because my battery is running low. Close this, go here before I lose my people. I'm gonna make myself a host. Yes. And when this runs out, I'm gonna switch this little thing here. All right. I want to make sure, Maggie, can you tell me if you can still hear me? Yes, you can shake your head? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, here we are. Here we are. Ready there? Ready there? Where's my owl? Okay, I'm gonna disconnect for the owl for a little bit. Yes, I am in Zoom and people can see me here. I'm just not connected to the owl. Oh, there's the owl. Can you see it? It's the camera. Okay. Michelle, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that blip. It's okay, it's done. All right. So what do you do with an RBA? I was going to give you an example. So, for example, when you talk about quantity and quality, you have the number of participants. So how much did you do? You can count on the number of participants that enrolled, the number of classes that were provided, the number of, toys you got for the toy drive, all those kind of things. When you talk about the quality, is how many people actually accessed the services, who completed the program. It's kind of percentages. How many people were satisfied, kind of like showing how, like, you ran this program, you did all these things, and this is the outcome of the program right there and then. And when you think about if it's anybody's better off, you are talking about more long-term, and what were the things that people were able to accomplish, or make them feel like, their lives were improved as a result of your program. Usually when you present RBAs for a grant, you present only one or two. So I remember Fairfield County Community Foundation used to be very specific that they wanted us to pick only one of each. That's all they wanted us to report it. So you gotta pick carefully, but then at the same time, you have to pick all of it. And if you have a different set of things that you are constantly measuring, move them into the system. And when you speak about your grants and how your impact is gonna be, you're gonna be a lot more well-versed about, what's the impact of the program that you're presenting to people. The book is really good at explaining what's the reasoning behind this. Hopefully you can see how, measuring the impact is so important in the long term. So, when you have an RBA, you want to define the results, you want to set your targets, you want to measure performance, you want to analyze your data constantly, make decisions and take action, report and communicate about it with your funder. If something is not working, talk to them. Just say, hey, we are in the middle of the grant and I'm checking and things haven't worked out so well. What can we do in order to improve it? They love to engage into these conversations and work on continuing improvement. So, but one key here is that for you to be effective at catching things, you have to keep on continuing analyzing your data at least monthly. what I say normally, if 6 months have gone by and you just then realize that you haven't met your goals, that you have yourself for it, it's already too late. You are not gonna catch up the rest of the year. So when you are working on writing grants, you want to make sure that the program people are keeping updating, and if they can compare their numbers from the year before to this year. Mainly, it's not to say, hey, why is it that we are not serving the same number of people? It's to say, what has changed in our environment that doesn't allow us to do the work the way we did it last year? It may be, something that is happening in the town. It may be something that is happening in the, with the general public. Or it may be something that is lacking in your organization, and you want to know what is it so that you can bring the resources that are needed in order to get it done. Okay, so we have 1 minute left. Really quickly, measuring effectiveness. Address the critical community needs. What it means is that you want to address and highlight specific programs that have been implemented for the people that need it the most. Or the things that are most needed. You wanna engage in collaboration. Your efforts must show that you have partnerships in which with other organizations and government agencies that you're partnering within the organization and outside the organization to make this happen. Other things that you want to show, you want to provide outcomes that are measurable, that are clear, right? And for that, you need to work very well with your programs. Make sure that they understand what are kind of like the things that the funders would like to see, and ask them what are the things you feel that are more important, and then meet somewhere in the middle. Like I said before, funders are well-intentioned people, but they don't know it all. And they don't know the intricacies of your program. Intricacies, I can't say that word, but like the difficult things of your program. And you may want them to make sure that you are constantly engaging with your people that do the work to know what's happening and what's going on. You wanna do future planning. You wanna present, what's beyond the immediate funding, whether you need the support of that funder or there are other ways that you're gonna be able to obtain the funding in the future. And if you can scale the services, right? If you can say, well, if we do this pilot this year and we are able to engage more collaboration, next year we might be able to replicate this in 3 other areas, or 3 other places, 3 other schools, 3 other something. You want to make sure you have a good outreach to get to those people that need it the most. We all are experienced with those participants that come back year after year for the same help, and they are the ones that know about our programs, and they're taking advantage of what we offer. You want to reach those people that may have the need, but they are not necessarily aware of what you have. That's a way to, make sure that you get that grant in a good place. And also, you want to show that you have programs that are culturally sensitive and appropriate, right? That you are serving people, understanding their culture, their needs, and you learn from them at the same time. We are beyond the times in which just, people, good old white people, gave money to, to the charity of the church. We are past that, and we have to continue working into our funders to understand what is it that our people need and what we are working towards. So hopefully this has inspired you a little bit to get really into grant writing. Once you write your story and you understand your story well, things become easier. If you do the hard work in the beginning and you really get those narratives that are basic in place, then you can work and will have time available to work with your programs to come through with better narratives and better ways to talk about the programs that you're proposing and want to get funded. So our last workshop is going to be Tuesday, December 19th. And what we are going to be talking about is strategy and execution. Most of us are good at either strategizing or executing, but very little number of people are good at doing both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a few formulas that we can use all together to think about a strategy in the long term and then execute the strategies that we set ourselves to. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that came remote, and we will see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Are you volunteering for the?
Yeah.